Yeah, which I do, well. Oh. Hello guys, and welcome back to Car Obsession. Now, regular viewers may recognise the car in this video because this is the SEAT Ibiza FR I used to own. It's now in the possession of my old man, and he said he's got a problem with his alternator. So he said he wanted a professional, and then I answered. Joking aside, this should be quite a straightforward job, so I'm going to give it a go and see how I get on. Now, this is not strictly a how-to video, and my disclaimer is I'm not a trained mechanic, so this, like I said, this isn't a how-to guide. However, if you find this video helpful or you learn something, then hey, that's brilliant. Anyway, let's get cracking. First thing I need to do, of course, I need to disconnect the battery because the alternator is an electrical item and you don't want to do any harm. I've got my wedding ring on, so I'm going to take that off as well because it's best practice. So yes, let's do that first. So I'm going to remove the negative terminal. I believe this will be a 10mm, so I've got my ratchet here. There we go. Just tuck that to the side like so. Right, time to take the engine cover off just to give us a bit more access and give us a bit more space. Thankfully, it's easier on the Ibiza than it is compared to my Leon. You've got a 10mm nut at the top, which you take off, and I believe it's been quite a long time since I've taken this off. Actually, I think you undo that, you just literally pull the cover off. So let's see how we get on. So that nut's now been undone. I think it's just a case of just encouraging the engine to come off. There we go. Yeah, that's a damn sight easier compared to my Leon. So, one engine cover removed, pop that to the side. Now, the alternator itself, just to take my camera off the tripod, it's just there, as you can see. Now, you will need to remove this. This is the throttle body. And of course, you'll need to remove this as well. So that's going to be my next issue to tackle. And as you can see, you've also got this clip here that needs to be removed, which is holding this hose in place. So let's move the camera around so you can see what I'm doing. Right, so if possible, you want something to try and keep this hose out of your way. So my dad's got some kind of garden tie cable, so that hose is going to be less in my way, which is handy. Next up is removing the throttle body. So I've got a 5mm Allen key. You've got 4 bolts, 1 in each corner. This is quite a square unit. So the throttle body has been removed. Let's just pop that to the side. Whilst I'm here and it's on my mind, there is a small connector on the back of the alternator, which you can't really see too well. Let me actually bring you guys in. There we go. So I'm going to remove that next, as that needs doing, so I may as well do it now. So with a flathead screwdriver, these connectors can be quite fragile, so try not to put too much force through them.
A few minutes later.
There we go. Right, so that's that connector disconnected. Next up, you're going to want to remove the tension from the tensioner, and I've got a very special tool for this. It's literally a small metal rod. So I've got an adjustable spanner, so I'm going to pull this down like so, and then lock it in place with this magical rod. Yes, no expense spared. And then once I've done that, I'll be able to remove the existing belt and then remove the tensioner itself. That hose is in the way a little bit. Let's just loosen it off a bit. Right, there we go. Right, at this point, you might not be able to see what I'm doing, so apologies for that. Now, this is spring loaded, So don't let go of it suddenly, because you might do yourself an injury. So hopefully you can see now. There we go. So the tensioner is now locked into place using my special rod.
Giggity.
And I can now remove the old belt. Now, to be fair, from what I can see, this belt does look to be in pretty good condition, but I've got a new one, so I may as well fit it. A new alternator belt won't cost too much, so I may as well replace that whilst we're here. I'll just fish it out. You may need to use a bit of jiggling. Right, okay, that's getting snagged at the bottom there. Yeah, I look forward to putting a new one in. That's probably going to be a little bit awkward. Right, let's just get my hands right in. The old belt is removed, and if we actually check the condition of the belt, let me zoom out a bit. Right, let me come around the camera, like so. So the condition of the old belt, hopefully that's focusing. I don't think it is. There we go, now it is. The old belt looks to be okay. So theoretically, there's no reason why we can't just reinstall this, but like I said, I've got a new one. Now, as the old belt is out, what I thoroughly recommend doing to save any aggro moving forward is to get your new belt, if you've purchased one, and to make sure that it is the same length. So I've got my new one here, which is made by Gates, a very reputable company. So, right, so let's just try and get the two belts together. Right, that's the old one, that's the new one. So let me try and squash this one. So as you can see, oh, you can't really see too well, can you? They do look to be the same length. There we go. So that shouldn't give us any headaches moving forward, which is good because we don't like headaches. Now it is time to remove the tensioner. So there are 3 bolts, one of which you can see just here. There's also one, so the bolts are in a triangle formation. So you've got one there which you can see on camera, one at the bottom which you probably can't see, and one to the left which you definitely can't see. I can barely see it and I'm stood looking over it. Let's see what size these are. My gut says it's a 13. Is my gut right? Oh, I think it is. Oh, well, I'm very impressed by that. Right, okay, so ratchet at the ready. And there we go. So that's what the bolt looks like. I'll say it is a 13mm. I've got 2 more to remove. So the third bolt, the one that you can't see, that's not in a particularly good place because you've got 2 hoses running quite near it. It's a bit difficult to get to and a bit difficult to see as well. That was really going to be tricky. So I could really do with these hoses moving, but I don't want to damage or split them. To be fair, it's not as awkward as I first thought. You'll just need to gently move the hoses a little to allow you to get the socket on, and then you're good to go. But the tension is now free. In fact, the tension actually kind of fell down. So if I just lift it up like so, there we go. There is one tensioner. Now then, ladies and gentlemen, it's kind of time for the main event, and that is removing the alternator. So let me zoom you in. Right, get the focus right. So there's 2 bolts for the alternator, one at the top just here and one at the bottom. I think they are. I was going to say a 17, but now I've got the socket in my hand. That looks too big. It's definitely not a 17. That I can confirm. Is that a 13 as well? Where's my 13mm? That's also a 13mm. Alrighty then.
Alrighty then.
Okay, that bolt was really easy to get out. I thought it was going to give me much more of a headache. Who knows, maybe this alternator's been replaced before. I had this car for about 4-5 years, and I never replaced the alternator, but this car isn't exactly a spring chicken, so it may have had an alternator in its time. Right, there's one bolt. Quite long, as you can see. Thankfully, removing the second bolt was just as painless. Right, so the bolts from the alternator have been removed. Now what you also need to do is you've got a little rubber cap just there. That needs to be removed. There's a nut underneath it, and that's the ground wire if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to try and get it off with a pick. There's also another nut towards the back, which you can't really see and I can't really get to. So I'm going to pry the alternator free and then bring it towards the offside headlight, which should give me better access to the rear. And once I've disconnected those two items, it's ready to come out of the car. Let's try actually getting this free first. Come on, baby. Oh, whoopsie daisy. Right. Aha. One plastic cap removed. So the way how I got it off was using a pick and just some steady and patient handwork. Come on autofocus. There we go. So yes, using a pick and a bit of patience, the rubber plastic cap, whatever you want to call it, that's now off. So again, that will be reused, so pop it somewhere safe. Now that the cap is removed, that is the nut you want to take off, the one that's in the middle and sadly out of focus. Let me just fix that. There we go, move that hose out of the way. And I believe that's a 13mm. So that's now removed. I can disconnect that wire. And the only thing left to remove, which I doubt I'm going to be able to get on camera, is a nut which is holding on, I think it's a bracket for some wiring. No, it's just too dark in there, I'm afraid. No. When removing the nut, you'll want to be careful not to lose it in the engine bay, so best to undo it by hand once it's loose enough. Getting the alternator out seemed trickier than expected, but my dad came up with a clever solution. Right, there we are, there's the old alternator out. For some reason my camera turned itself off whilst I was taking it out. A little bit fiddly, you will need to kind of manoeuvre it in certain angles to get it out. Now, if you happen to own a 2006 Ibiza or one of that generation, I think the model code is 6L from memory, to be pedantic, you'll probably want to remove the cover for the headlight. Got my glamorous assistant, i.e. my dad. So that's the cover for the back of the headlight, and that was the alternator was getting caught in it, and you may be able to see just on there. You can see I've kind of scuffed it a little bit. So I think that's quite a good top tip for me. You may not need to, but I recommend replacing that for the sake of two clips that hold it in place. That did definitely make my life a lot easier. Now the old alternator is going to be sent back to the supplier because they can send it away and have it reconditioned, and I'll get a bit of money back. So it's now, of course, time to fit the new alternator. Right, which I have. Here we are. Here's the new unit, but obviously careful not to drop the new unit. Carefully, place it in carefully. Right. Okie dokie. So basically now is the reverse of what I did a few moments ago. So nut for the bracket holder has been put back on, so I'm just currently redoing up the 13mm nut that holds the ground wire in place. I do hope that's the correct terminology. And then I'm ready to reattach the alternator with the two bolts. When bolting the alternator back in place, you may want to fit the bottom bolt first, as I found getting the bolt lined up was more difficult when I had fitted the top bolt first. Once I had refitted the alternator, I refitted the belt tensioner, but this made it a lot more difficult to get the new belt in place, so I recommend reinserting the belt before putting the tensioner back in. This error cost me quite a bit of time. Right, a tiny bit fiddly, but the new belt is on. So it's on all three of the pulleys. I've made sure it's seating nicely, and it appears to be. So now time to reattach the tensioner, and of course reattach the throttle body. In fact, actually, whilst I'm here, let me reconnect the connector for the back of the alternator. There we go. I just move my hand so you can see that connector just towards the middle of your screen. I'm going to pop it back in like so. There we go, that's now reconnected. So yes, for the second time, I'm going to reattach the tensioner, but now I've got a kind of a better gist of what I'm doing. It should be quicker. Right, there we are. Now it's time to take the I was going to say take the tension off the tensioner. In fact, I'm doing the opposite, aren't I? So, right. Now, release this slowly, otherwise it's going to snap back. So, right, that all looks to be good. After that, it was time to reinstall the throttle body, but just be careful not to over tighten the bolts. Yeah, which I did well. Oh, that will teach me for not using the Allen key. Right, ready? Yeah. Success! The strange noise you can hear is what I have been told could be the secondary air pump. So there we are, guys, an alternator fitted, and hopefully that will fix my dad's problem. So he'll need to take the car out for a good drive and see whether or not the battery is getting charged. I don't think there's an issue with the battery because I fitted that myself 1 or 2 years back, well maybe a little bit longer than that, but the battery should be fine. But obviously if this doesn't fix the problem, the battery is probably the next avenue in which to go down. I do hope you have enjoyed this video or perhaps found it useful. Yes, I know some of the camera angles weren't the greatest, but some bits were difficult to get some bits were difficult to get the right kind of lighting or the right angle, so I do appreciate your patience whilst you've been watching this video. But yes, if you have found it useful or you have indeed enjoyed it, then be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you are subscribed, don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time, guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.